Hello viewers, welcome to Core for Any Medicare App Backend's API Node.js inside. Today I need to develop this here the two API. First one is the edit city, and then after need to create this here the remove city API we need to develop here in admin. Now first of all need to declare here the app. Need to scroll up and we need to write down here app dot post, and we need to call this here API slash admin slash edit city, and we need to create here the request response and callback functions need to write down here. First of all need to print this here the parameters helper.dig delogs and request dot body. Then after save inside the request object value request dot body like here. Now we need to check here the access token is valid or not. Need to check here. We need to pass this here the first parameters as a header. So we need to pass here. Need to write down here the request dot headers. Then after need to pass here the response object, and we need to get this here the callbacks if valids. Then to get this here the user objects we need to get here and callback functions. Now after need to check this here the required parameters conditions we need to write down here. Need to call this here the helper dot check parameter valid functions need to calls. First ones need to pass this here the response, then after need to give this here the request object, and then after need to one by one check this here the parameters. First one is to need this here the city id, then after need this here the city name, then after need to latitudes and longitudes need to need here two parameters like here. So need to copy, otherwise need to typo in spelling, that's why I need to copy and paste here this name like here. These are parameters are the checkings. If here the valid, then to return this here the done callback. So need to return here inside this bracket. Need to get here. Now we need to update here these city names. First of all, need to write down here the db dot query, and we need to call this here the update. Set here the table name as a city id, city detail, and we need to set this here the value, and we need to set here the city name first columns. Then after the latitudes and longitudes we need to updates and longitudes question mark, and last one is the modify date, and set here the now. And we need to write down here the where conditions need to write here. Need to write down here the now functions. Make mistake, fix this here, double quotes, add plus signs, and other double quotes need to enter here and new lines create. Now need to check this here the city id is equal to question mark and status is not equal to 2. Then to perform this here the operations, 2 means here the delete. Now we need to pass this here the parameters request object dot city name, then after need to pass this here the request object dot latitudes request object dot longitude, and last ones need to needs here request object dot city id underscore id. Like these parameters are the parsings inside this value in update query. Now need to these functions are the returns here the callbacks errors and results. So need to returning this here like here. Now first of all need to check this here if errors get check here if error, then to throw this here the helper HTML errors, and to pass this here the errors and response objects, and to return these functions like here. Then after need to check here if results is affected row more than 0, means here the successfully update these records. If here's not here the more than 0, means 0 is equal to response here the fails, update are not successfully, then to return this here the response as a status colons 1, and set here the message msg fail. Like this we need to write down here, and we need to write down here the response dot json, and we need to write down here the status, set here 1. Here make mistake, we need to set here the success code, that's when to set here the 0. Now need to write down here message, and we need to return in this here the message city updated successfully. Like message we need to returning this here, and we need to save this here files, and this edit city api are the done. And now need to develop this here the delete city api, need to making here again, so need to explain here. Now need to create again new api, need to write down here the app dot post methods. These methods are the x url and codes methods, need to call this here. Now we need to write down here the slash api slash admin, and to write down here the delete ct. Now need to get here the two value request and response. Like here the getting here the callback. First ones need to print this here the against these parameters inside the which value need to get, need to show here for the debug purpose. Semicolons where request object is equal to call this here the request dot body. You need to get here. Now need to check this here the access tokens is valid so or not for this user access. So need to check here. Now need to pass here the first parameters request dot header. Then after need to pass this here the response and response variables need to pass here. Then after need to get here the callbacks if valid. Then to get this here the user object return here, and we need to always check this here the required tabs, as we need to set here the admin as a pi, need to forget here the edit api. First of all need to put this here the edit inside, need to find out here the brackets, and to write here like here the value, and we need to put this here and to restrict this only this access this api for admin users, other user cannot access directly this api. Like we need to set here the configurations. Now we need to check this here the parameters are valid parameters or not missing parameters, need to check here, need to call this here the helper dot check parameters, check parameter valid, and we need to pass this here the value response object request objects second parameters. Then after need to check here the key, need to needs here pass to city underscore id, and need to return this here if valid, then to get this here the callback inside these functions. Now we need to call this here the db query. You need to write down here db dot query, and to write here the delete query. We need to soft delete, not use this here the hard deletes, because we need to other records are the related to connect with these records may be possible. That's why I need to not delete any hard deletes. Need to always use this here the flag deletes, need to use here. So we need to give this here the status to manage here the deletes. Now here so need to update query again, so need to call, so need to write down here the city underscore detail, and we need to call this here the sets, and to update this here the status is equal to question mark, and set here the modify column, to write down here the modify date, and set here the now set here the where conditions and to write down here the city underscore id and question mark, like here the write down here, and also need to check here the end conditions for the status is equal to not equal to question mark. Now need to pass this here this question mark value inside the error brackets. Need to write down here. First of all, so need to give this here the status for the deletes. Need to set here the 2, and we need to give this here the request object dot city id. Need to pass here, and again need to set here the 2, not as a delete. Then to all this perform this here the operations. Now these functions also need to return this here the errors and result. 2 callbacks need to return here, and these functions inside need to check here if here the errors. Then to write down here the helper dot dlog, and to call this here the not dlogs, we need to throw here the errors, throw html errors. We need to call here, so we need to write down here the error parameter first and response objects if here the availables, and we have to return these functions. Now after, so we need to check here is result affected row more than 0, else parts need to call here, need to copy here this fail response, and success response also need to copy and to paste here and to deleted successfully. Like this, need to write down here the message. If you like this video, please give the thumbs up. If you're new user, so please subscribe my channels and press the notification bell icon. You can get every new video notifications and awesome content. If you have any question, so please write down the comment sections. I will help you and sort out your issue. Everyone have a nice day. Goodbye and take care.